It's Parsha Tazria, Parsha Chodesh, same time, the fourth of the four special Torahs, but it really sums up essentially. It's all about Gula. Everybody wants Gula, not the one downtown Yerushalayim necessarily, right? But the real one, the one that is more than likely does not have a fast food store every other shop. But it's like, that's what it's all about. That's what we've been doing now for 6,000 years. For 6,000 years, almost 6,000 years, we've been in a state of tikkun, of repair. Right? Adam HaRishon made a tragic mistake. He did a L'Shem Shemaim at the beginning. It was shogi at the beginning, it was Pashir at the end, but he made a mistake, and the mistake basically cost mankind the rest of history until Mashiach finally comes. And even though the Jewish people came along much later on in time, it's always been about the tikkun of Adam HaRishon. The Rizal explains that the nefesh of Adam HaRishon went to Avraham. He worked on that. He rectified. He fixed it up. The ruach of Adam HaRishon went to Yitzchak, and he fixed that up, right? And then came the neshama of Yaakov Avinu from Adam HaRishon, and he rectified that. And eventually, through the three of them, the Adam HaRishon had pretty much not a complete tikkun, but enough of a tikkun that now you can give birth to the Shvatim or the Hemshech. And that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara asks the question, why the Jewish people are referred to as Adam when the nations of the world are just called Umas Olam, nations of the world. And there's even the blood libels based upon that specific Gemara that it certainly sounds chauvinistic. In fact, not too long ago in Canada, well, relatively speaking, about 20 years ago in Canada, there was a professor in Western Canada who tried to get the Gemara banned from being brought across the border because of the specific Gemara and other places. But the shot basically is because of the fact that we have Adam in us. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov brought the Shemnas in, they rectified them. That was given over to Klal Yisrael. And even though we're talking about the rectification as individuals and as a nation as a whole, but overall we're working on the rectification of Adam HaRishon. That's very significant. That's one of the reasons why the gematria of Mashiach and Nachash are the same, because the Nachash was the instrument to bring us out of Gan Eden, to put us into Galus, to have us basically expelled, and Mashiach is going to reverse that. So there's a very strong correlation, and that's why we've been emphatic about the fact that we're living right now the 10th hour of history, corresponding to the hour in which Adam HaRishon ate the Eitz Das Tov Ra. Let me just briefly explain that for those who have not heard it 55,000 times with the rest of everybody else. I don't know how many times I can say it, Virginia, at this point, but the basic idea is that one day corresponds to 1,000 years, right? The very correlation brought down in the Gra explains that everything happened the first 7 days of creation, 6 days of creation will have a corresponding event in the millennia, because one corresponds to 1,000 years, the second day corresponds to the second 1,000 years, and so on and so forth. So basically it's just a projection. Just like, for example, your DNA, your physical DNA is a projection into the physical reality embodied in you. Like you look at a person, you can, look at their hair, look at the color of their eyes, you can tell pretty much what not that much about their DNA, but something about their DNA. If you lose your hair a little bit early, right, or it turns gray, whatever the case may be, it's all written in the DNA. Kids also contribute to things like that, right? But for the most part, financial worries, a whole bunch of stuff can add to that. But there are people who do have kids and financial worries and still keep their hair to the age of 80. That's a genetic thing, for the most part. Not just because the kids are better, but it's just the physical world, the physical presentation of a person is just going to be the projection of the person's DNA. Likewise, history, the 6 millennia, is a projection of the events of the 6 days of creation, and if that's the case, then basically it means the history repeats itself. Whatever happened the first day will have some kind of corresponding reality. And the most significant, most important event that happened in the course of the 6 days that makes a difference for is going to be the Achilas Eitz Das Tov Ra. Right? The eating of the Eitz Das Tov Ra, that's the most significant thing, because that's what's being rectified. We're not rectifying the creation of the animals, we're not rectifying the creation of the grass, we're not rectifying the fact that the water is divided into two and there is, Shemaim and earth. That's all, part and parcel. There is an aspect of rectifying the mistake that on the third day when Akash Baruch Hu told that the trees should bring forth fruit, that its fruit tastes like the bark, and the tree Merkov Chomer, read the Marsha, how that actually happened, and as a result of that, built into Ma'aser Bereshit. Things were going wrong before man came along, right? The famous Gemara Nechulin, on Tzemach Hamid Beis, as Rashi points out, in the fourth of creation, Ma'aros, is written Chaser because the moon complained, used to be as bright as the sun, not as big as the sun, but as bright as the sun, and was reduced in its light because of the fact that it fetched, right? Thus teaching us it's not good to complain to God about what you have, unless you want to be, a smaller moon in the end, or a less bright moon. But that's part of the rectification. Eventually comes into the play of man itself. The truth is, the whole thing with the Mir HaLevana is extremely Kabbalistic, very major section of the Zohar, because basically it's dealing with the whole concept of Tzimtzum in the first place. Even though the story makes a nice bedtime story for children, and you can do a lot with it, the reality is it's not exactly what happened, the way the story is presented. It wasn't that the moon simply fetched and said the two kings can't wear the same crown, but really it was a process that Akash Baruch Hu used to make Ma'aser Bereshit by filtering light for the sake of producing a world that can eventually support the Vayikra. So it's certainly worth going through that. If you ever want to go through that inside a little bit on a deeper level, I'd be very happy to do that. It's a very fascinating section of Torah itself and Kabbalah in general. But back to the main point, which was, again, forgot that one. So it's all about Tikkun. That's the bottom line. It's all about Tikkun. So in this week's parsha, you have basically the whole inyan of tsaras, which is not really leprosy. It's a spiritual leprosy, perhaps. It's a infliction of the skin. And the question really that you have to ask is why there's some there's so many other averas that a person could be afflicted in the skin. For things that are actually more fleshy type of averas. For example, overeating. Although the truth is, tsaras, one of the things that can cause tsaras is in fact overeating and things like that. Not because you physically that it causes it, but spiritually, Akash Baruch Hu will give a person tsaras. There are 7 different reasons why a person gets tsaras, but the main thing, of course, is loshon hara, which we learned from Miriam, who spoke the nicest loshon hara you can possibly imagine, still got tsaras in Parshas B'Holsecha, and that's tsaras is primarily identified with the avera of loshon hara, right? And the question is why? Why should that be? Why should that be the actual divine response to that specific avera? Let all averas get tsaras, right? Or certainly, sexual averas into that. That's for sure. If a person doesn't get stoning or skila or the same thing, skila or whatever ownership a person is supposed to get for strangulation, it depends upon the avera. They should get tsaras instead. They don't get tsaras instead. They can get chorus and like that, but it's more severe. But it just comes. This is the main point: is that why is it specifically that loshon hara itself results in a skin affliction? Let the guy bite his tongue. That happens to me, by the way. I speak too much loshon hara, I end up biting my tongue, or a tooth falls out, or something, But or I run out of toothpaste. But after the McCall is closed. But there should be more here. This is the point. Where's the midah k'neged midah? That's where's the question coming from? That's where the question's coming from. Who cares what the onish is? The Akash Baruch Hu is the onish for things that go wrong. That's it. But we have a principle. The Akash Baruch Hu punishes midah k'neged midah for the sake specifically that you should be able to learn from your chet. So how do I learn? Okay, so Rashi brings down the Gemara brings down that as a result of getting tsaras, a person becomes tameh. He has to be set aside. Why? Because this person speaking loshon hara about this person created friction between this person and other people. People look differently at this person. He becomes more isolated. So if you're isolating this person through your loshon hara, you get isolation as well. But there's different ways to isolate a person. Just say it. The person gets isolated, right? He gets caught speaking loshon hara. So, isolate him. Put him in a room somewhere, in the corner, on a chair, turn him face to the corner. Right? Why specifically the tsaras itself? Okay. That's the question. And how does it apply today? What's going on in the world today? Because that's obviously everything. We're in the final stages of tikkun. What's happening historically today, it has to be put into a context of tikkun olam of the entire world. As we mentioned before, a long time ago, a few times, maybe not. I don't remember because I forget after a while what I say. But the basic idea, there are 3 eras, 3 periods of tikkun in history, according to Kabbalah. The first one is called Tikkun Seder Klilus. Right? Everything has to become unified. Tikkun, rectification, seder, the order of klilus, inclusion. And the word kolel, right? The kolel, something to cloud, it's all included, right? That's the first stage of tikkun. That supposedly lasts from the beginning of Ma'aseh Bereshis until Yemos HaMashiach. The Yemos HaMashiach begins officially when the wars are over, Kosh Baruch Hu, there's peace, everybody's moded, Kosh Baruch Hu is the only one, the only God, the only King, and the world is utopia, like the way we dream of it to become eventually. So that begins the second stage of history called Tikkun Sod Klilus, meaning that it's the Tikkun of the Sod, like the mystery, the deeper Kabbalistic aspect of it, and we'll see what the difference is going to be. The final, that goes on until year 10,000. The year 10,000, not years like we have today. It's actually based upon, even our time. The whole concept of Shas Manius is based upon the idea of Nitzotzi Kedusha. We actually tell time, really, we should have watches that count Nitzotzim. Right, what time is it? It's 1400 Nitzotzim past Chatzot. It's like, he has one, look at that, Nitzotzim. Where'd you get this from? It's like an hourglass, right? With grains of sand. You turn it upside down, the grains of sand go down, and they're all in the bottom chamber. So then the egg's ready. Take it off. But here it's reversed, where all the grains and the tzotzim are at the bottom part, and they have to go back to Shemayim. So there's different ways of doing that. We learn Torah, use it for tzotzim, right? You do mitzvahs, use it for tzotzim. You eat food, you use it for tzotzim, because every time you do so, you consume something, you eat it, you're using something in the world, you're breaking it apart. And then the tzotzim part get released and they go to the next level. So for example, the tzotzim, they begin the klipos. They get pulled out of the klipos, usually by tefillas of tzaddikim. Mitzvahs can do it too, but usually the main method that the tzotzim get pulled out of the klipos, ever since Adam's chet, right? The area, the basement where all the mold is and things like that. It's like the negative forces of creation, spiritual impurity, right? That's where they went. Because of Adam's chet, they went right down to there. We've been pulling them out. Rectification of creation is when they're all pulled out. When the last nitzotz is pulled out, turns off the lights, the klipos are gone. It's not like they just, become dilapidated or dried out. And you look, look at this old klip over there. It's all, it's like a prune that got old. No, it's not like it. It just disappears. It goes like smoke disappears because it lives off the kedusha of tzotzim. In fact, just to throw you a curveball here, that I actually saw in the Rizal, very interesting. I'll take a look on Prince Chaim on Purim, Pesach, and all the Chagim. But I saw this in Purim recently. Adl Yada Bein Arahamim and Baruch Mordechai Kabbalistic. You know this already?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you could share with me. Because basically, the tzotzim are all encased in klipos until they get released in the klipos itself, right?
What tzotzim? The sphere? What are you talking
about? The tzotzim are sparks, holy sparks. Holy sparks. Okay. The spheres are made up in a tzotzim, right? But these are individual sparks. Your neshama is an tzotz, it's an individual. The reason why you're different from him, he's different from you, and we're all different from one another, is because it's all one light. It's all Kosh Baruch Hu's light. Kosh Baruch Hu, he basically took a little saran wrap and he wrapped up the tzotzim in little individual packages, like Mashlach Manas, and you got yours, and you got yours, and you got yours. And they all have identities. As a result of that, we're all different people, right? So the tzotzim are more individualized. It's Kosh Baruch Hu's light that's really one, but broken up into little pieces so that we can have identities in the meantime. It's complicated how it actually works because it's kind of an oxymoron. Because how do you have light that's Ein Sof, unlimited and undefinable to become individual? But that's part of Tzimtzum, it's part of the miracle of life. That is the miracle of life in the end. Okay?
The klipos are the imperfections on top of the sparks, right?
Ultimately speaking, the klipos basically have the koich of gevura before it's sweetened. The klipos itself just emanate from that which is a klipa is just really something within creation that distracts you away from Hashem. That's like a peel. The same way a peel blocks you from the fruit, right? So the klipos themselves, they have this metzias, they have this reality for the sake of free will, for the sake of mankind to be able to use their free will to earn schayna olam haba. The klipos are given, they're personified, they're anthropomorphized, right? What's the word? Right? Anthropomorphized?
Anthropomorphized.
Sounds like it, right? Yeah, it sounds like there's a vowel missing somewhere in there. But anyhow, that's what happens.
Anthropomorphic.
Yeah. You know what I mean. They get a personality. They're real in life. But it's a metzias. It's a reality that allows man to not focus on Hashem. Amalek takes advantage of that to distract us from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's his main device of distraction. So what happens in the meantime, because of the Chet of Adam Arishon, so there's the reality of the Klipos, which did exist prior to the Chet too, and the Tzotzim fell down into that. That's like lower than the actual, the spheres of Malchus and everything else. Technically it's not lower, it's actually, it overlaps, but it's kilu is lower, it's as if it's lower, right? We have to draw them out. So history is a game show, in a sense, right? Where we're racing against time, because when Mashiach, there's a be'ita, Metzias reality, and we have to finish by then. If we don't finish by then, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will finish the job for us. We spoke about Mituk HaGevuris, how that works a bit. We'll talk about it more, Mr. Hashem. But that's the basic idea. And the Tzotzim get pulled out, eventually get pulled out, they get drawn to the first level. The first level is domain, the mineral world. Right? The Tzotzim, for example, grain of salt, right? Or rock, or stones, whatever the case may be, they're all made up from the Tzotzim. If it doesn't have a Tzotzim, it can't exist. And as the Rizal brings down, for example, one of the punishments of loshon hara is actually coming back as a rock. We'll put it this way, you come back in a rock. You don't actually come back as a rock. The Neshama will go into the rock and exist there for a period of time. It's a whole definition. It's a whole different reality. It's probably where rock and roll came from in the first place. Sounds like it. But anyhow,
there's a base of these klipos, and the sparks come down into them.
They went down into them. They fell into them. Like it's almost like meteorites or little pieces of an asteroid falling into a swamp, type of a thing, and going deeper into the swamp.
I thought everything came down and it became more and more imperfect as it came down and became more klipot, more and more klipot, more imperfection as it.
No, it didn't have to be that way. At the beginning, before the chet, even though it was filtered, it's true, it became less holy, like you're saying, but not yet the klipot. In the beginning, before the chet, before Adam actually looked at the tree itself and got involved with his hara, so that the klipot actually were located in the bottom 14 levels of creation, and we were above it all. The whole world that we exist in today was above it all. And that's why you could have Gan Eden. The result of the chet was all the levels of the spheres that correspond to our reality. They fell down into the klipa. So that's what it means that Adam is Ra Minurav. When it says that Adam is evil from his birth, it's because basically the reality which we live, which used to be above all the klipot, fell into the klipot. And the result was the creation became more gashmi, more physical. So that's what the main point over here. The main point that they make is that this skin, which we, actually in this week's parsha, you can see the word mashcha, and if you learn Shnei Mechachal Targum, the translation of the word or, in this parsha is mashcha, right? And it's actually, this is called mashcha de chivya. This is called the skin of the snake, because he caused this. This skin we have right now is not the skin that we were born with, we were created with. We were born either for that matter, but we weren't created with the skin. This is the result, all the capillaries, all the veins, all the vessels, your intestines, the whole ganzen, malrechet inside of you was more conceptual than it was physical at the beginning. You didn't have to have intestines and things like that, or a blood system, because basically there was no reason for being. The whole point of your blood system, and your whole entire body does one thing and one thing only for the most part. That's a little contradictory there. One thing and one thing only for the most part, which implies not one thing, one thing only. But what it does primarily is that it separates out the good from the bad. That's all that's going on inside your body, right? You've got a digestive system that takes an apple, which looks completely good, but it's not completely good, right? Take a roll, which looks, it's whole wheat, it's the best whole wheat possible. You can't get better whole wheat. This is the most natural bread. Any more natural, you'd be eating the stock of wheat yourself, right out the field. This is like, but still your body can't eat the whole thing. It won't consume the entire thing. Your body will take that wheat stock or take the bread, and it will have to break it down and digest and pull out the minerals, which are really the tzotzim. The minerals themselves, just the casing of the tzotzim itself. Right? That's what makes a mineral healthy, is the tzotz inside of it. Because health, anyhow, is not defined by all those vitamins and nutrients. That we call them that because we noticed through experimentation that is healthy. But what makes those things healthy is the tzotzim inside of them. Because the main component of health is how close your body and soul are to each other. Your soul is the source of life inside of you. Your body has no independent source of life. It draws, just like the klipas draw from the netzotzim, your body draws from your neshama. So the closer your neshama is to your body, the healthier your body is going to be. The further away your neshama becomes from your body, the less healthy your body is going to be. So a person will ask the question, wait, there's a lot of evil people out there who never catch a cold, seemingly. So they would, and they should. And the reason why they don't is because for the sake of free will, Baruch Hu has to fudge the whole thing. Because if you notice that every time a person is in a very gets sick or drops dead, right? I think I'll eat this piece of trick. Boom, guys, it's gone like that, right? There's no bechira anymore because you say, obviously the food's not good for you. I'm not eating this recipe anymore. Like, all kinds of people go there, they never come out again, right? But what's doing it is Natzotzim HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes it that even evil people, and also there's also a certain amount of culpability. For example, there are all kinds of people with Tinik V'Nishba, with the halacha of Tinik V'Nishba. Somebody who does not know that they're Jewish, and they're raised by Gentiles, and they have no inkling. They maybe could figure it out. If they were, truth seekers, the Kodesh Baruch would help them in some way, in some level. But for the most part, there's a limited culpability if you don't know what's wrong. So therefore, they cannot be held responsible for that, and therefore, Kodesh Baruch Hu will not take them to task. So they will not get ill from eating the tray food they might be eating because of the fact that they're being saved by Kodesh Baruch Hu. But really, the system, if it were to run the way it's supposed to run, for example, in the Garden of Eden, as one person once pointed out, that if you saw a person chasing someone today with a knife and they wanted to kill somebody, right, you'd say, stop, it's wrong. Don't do it, it's wrong. Right? In the Garden of Eden, you would say, stop, it's false. What's the difference between false and wrong? Wrong is basically a subjective reality. Just good and evil is subjective. Truth, emes v'sheker, is absolute. There's no other way about it. So if there would be no reason why in the Garden of Eden someone would obviously wouldn't happen either for that matter, but let's say it could happen. There's no logical reason why a person would kill another person in the Garden of Eden before the chet. After the chet, there are reasons. It could be self-defense, because the person is guilty of capital punishment, the case may be, but before the chet, there was no reason for it, to kill somebody, so therefore it's completely false. Likewise, that before the chet, everything was completely pure. And we had a taste of that in the man. The man did not require your digestive system. There was nothing that was pasul. There was nothing that had to be rejected, which certainly would make things a lot easier in the desert for that matter. But it's more because that's because Baruch was telling us this is the level you're supposed to be living on as a Jew. That's why Haman is Haman. Right? His name is the man. Right? Yeah, it's not a coincidence. His name was Muchan actually originally, but he called Haman. Right? Because you look at the Chumash, where does Amalek first attack the Jewish people? Right after the episode of the man. That's where Amalek comes in. And why? Because they don't quite get the message of the man. And what is the message of the man? So that's a long story, right? Worth going to in Parashat Bashalach, which maybe even did at some point in time. But now that we're all getting older, and our memories are not what they used to be, which all,
You did go.
Good for you. But the whole point of the man was basically to get to the point, Erev Shabbos, when we picked up the Omer of man, according to the Meforshim, that rather than pick up 2 Omers of man and not let one rot, what was that? Moshe said, he didn't tell them in advance what to do. He just told them pick up the man every single day, 1 Omer per person. What happened? They went to Erev Shabbos and they collected 2 Omers of man, and they noticed the second one didn't rot. That was a big miracle, right? It confused them because the Kodesh Baruch Hu was consistent. So what was the difference? Moshe should have told them there's going to be a difference. And he was told by Hashem, they said there'd be a difference. So they came to the Nesiim and they said, look, the second number didn't rot. They came to Moshe, look, the second number didn't rot. Moshe, yeah, right. Kodesh Baruch Hu told me, but they tell you as well. You should know, right? Now, thanks for reminding me, right? You should know that Erev Shabbos, you collect for Shabbos, a double portion, right? You actually say it like that. You get Lechem Mishnah. Whatever you want to cook, do it today. Whatever you bake, do it today, because tomorrow you're not going to find it. Dasan Vavirim will go there looking for it, and there will be some left over, but the birds will take care of that part, and they won't find anything, right? So be nice to birds, right? Especially Parashat Bashalach. And what happens basically is that and Kodesh Baruch Hu goes to the whole thing, and then the story of Amalek follows after that. Why? Because what was supposed to have happened is that Moshe was supposed to tell them, you're going to get Lechem Mishnah. They're all getting excited. Wow, double portion for the first time the whole week, right? Double portion. Well, it's not over yet. The best part's yet to come, right? This is going to be really, really nifty. Your kids will like this. Make sure you take your kids with you at the same time. Go out there and don't collect 2 omers of man, right? Don't do that. right? Instead, take one omer of man, and as you're taking it, you say, L'chaved Shabbos Kodesh, just utter those 3 words, and you're going to watch, like it has yeast almost, right? You're going to watch 1 omer of man become 2 omers of man before your very eyes. That was supposed to happen. And that's why it says, V'haya b'yom shishi, because Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, V'haya is loshon simcha, the Gemara said. But when they actually go to collect it, it says, V'yehi b'yom shishi. Why? What's the difference? Because it's a phenomenally huge difference in the level of miracle when you have 2 omers of man that should become 1, but don't, right? But you collected 2 omers of man. But derech teva, you took 2 omers of man. So 1 didn't become, the 2 didn't become 1 in the end, like it's supposed to happen. So, but it's a phenomenon. You don't have to necessarily call it a miracle. You can call it a phenomenon. There's lots of things in creation that shouldn't be, but they are, right? The Twin Towers should not have come down by 2 airplanes, especially so quickly and but it happened. You can argue with history now, right? It happened. You can discuss it all you want architecturally and engineering, but it's a phenomenon. There was something went on there called conspiracy, but we won't go to that, right? But but to have a second omer of man not rot, okay, it's significant and it's interesting. But it's not out of the getter of what could happen to derech teva. But if you take 1 omer of man, and by saying 3 words, you don't add water, nothing. Just like let it sit there, you say l'chaved Shabbos Kodesh, and it becomes 2 omers of man. There's no explanation for that, except for nes. It's pure nes. Pure, unadulterated nes. If that's the case, the message was to the Jewish people that you have to understand, okay, and we're not talking about making 2 omers of man, nothing. That's already really Kabbalistic. If you can do a thing like that, you get a doctorate in Kabbalah, right? Masters in Kabbalah, right? But we're not asking you to do that right now. Just asking to get just the BA right now in Kabbalah, and that is to collect 1 omer of man that the bracha can be chal on. By saying the words, it becomes 2 omers of man. The Jewish people would have learned at that point in time through experience, which is much different than learning in theory. Right, they're much different than learning, on a theoretical level, like in class in school, or after the fact, which was the case in the end. And that is that the Jewish people are lamala min teva, and we have the koyach of dibur, as Bilam says about Moshe Rabbeinu. We have the koyach of dibur to change the reality, whether through tefillah, whether through Torah, or just making a bakasha, or just like using words itself, because talk is not cheap. The Gemara, in fact, says. It's in Hedron, that I would have thought, I don't know the exact quote exactly, but it's in Hedron, I think, study Testament base, that I would have thought that creation was for physical activity. And the truth is, that's exactly what all of history has thought for almost 6,000 years now. Actions speak louder than words, and you have all kinds of people devoted to physically being involved in the world, because that's what we have arms, we have legs. What do you use them for, right? Okay, also to go from your Gemara to the coffee room to get a drink, but beyond that, we could be physically involved in the world. So Gemara brings the pasuk down, and it says that eventually the Gemara brings the final pasuk down and says that the world was made for speech. We're here to speak, right? And the truth is, we should know that, because you go back to the very beginning of history, because Baruch Hu makes Adam Arishon, and He breathes the breath of life into him. He gives him a neshama. At that point, right? He's a golem right now. He's a physical, being, maybe even has a nefesh to some degree, like the animals. A golem can have a nefesh. That the Gra made a golem, you can put a nefesh, it moves around, or so the Maharal, right? I think the Gra also did too, but the Maharal is the one most famous for it, right? And he functions, you can talk to him and give him commands, and, like most people walking the streets today, right? It's like a very similar situation, right? Zombie, golem, right? Sounds the same almost, right? But it's basically it has a nefesh elokis. It has a certain, but it can't speak. Golem can't speak, because that's the koich of neshama. It's a much higher level. And when Hakadosh Baruch Hu breathed into him, and it became an Adam, the Metzius of an Adam. Uncle says, what does it mean? What did he become? Ruach Mamala, became a speaking spirit. Speech was a defining factor of Adam Arishon. That's what makes him godly. And the Zohar points out that it's speech that really defines the person. You can tell what the person's holding. Actions are deceiving. People could do all kinds of things, because you never know exactly what the person will do what they're doing. You can do all kinds of acts that could be the wrong thing, but in these circumstances, they're the right thing. Just know what the circumstances are, you can understand why the person acted this way. But the moment a person opens their mouth, depending upon what comes out of their mouth, and when it comes out of their mouth, and what the circumstances are, you can tell where the person's whole just like that. You can sum the person up just like that. Just by what they say. Because speech is the juncture point between the neshama and guf. It's where they meet. And the more, it's like a measuring cup. It's the indicator. It's like a thermometer. Speech is a spiritual thermometer that tells the person himself, but other people as well, how much neshama and how much guf. Right? The more refined my speech is, the more neshama. When I say refined, I don't just mean you can talk properly and have good derech eretz. That's also important. There's no question about that. But the more spiritual a person's, obviously, right? People with a lot of guf involved in their life, they don't talk spiritually. They can't. It's not part of the vocabulary. They don't think in those lines. But the more spiritual a person's speech is, and that's why Torah Shabbat Peh is so chashuv to Klal Yisrael, and why Kosh Baruch Hu made the bris on Torah Shabbat Peh, not on Torah Shabbat. Because why? Because that's the way we indicate that we're godly beings. We're made b'Tselem Elokim. That's how we indicate how much we're fulfilling the mandate to be a b'Tselem Elokim. So therefore, speech primarily is identified with the spiritual level of a person. And the spiritual level of a person was defined by how much kesonas or versus how much kesonas or. Chazal, this Zohar explains that the chet, the main transformation of the chet was kesonas or, spelled aleph vav reish, which means skin made from light. Adam's skin was made from light. And the main result was, after the chet, we got kesonas or, ayin vav reish. This skin, mashcha, as the Gemara as the English calls it, right? It's the physical, with all the capillaries and all the blood vessels and all the digestive system. Why? Because now, because of the chet, the world became a tarovis of tovara. Before, in the beginning, there was only the eitz das tovara, and everything else was tahor. Everything else was complete, was shalem. All of my celebrations were completely covered, like the mans. You could eat it, and nothing had to be rejected. There was no waste from it. But the result of the chet of the Eitz Das Tavara was to cause the metzias, the reality of the Eitz Das Tavara, to spread to the rest of creation, so now everything became on the level, including man himself, Eitz Das Tavara. So now there has to be a separation, which is why Borer is such a major part of Shabbos, because that's what all history comes down to, is Borer, to be Mavara something, to clarify something, to separate something out, to separate the truth from the falsehood, and to identify one over the other, and to go with the good and reject the evil in the end. So the kesonas or, the skin itself, became the representation of this person's spiritual level. So even though we don't have kesonas or today with an aleph, because that's now saved for Techis HaMeisim, and maybe even a little bit in Yemos HaMashiach, Moshe Rabbeinu, he was able to get an aspect of it. When Kosh Baruch Hu, because he worked in himself, and he was zeichet, the Kosh Baruch Hu passing by him in the cleft of the rock, when Kosh Baruch Hu passes you by like that, we're not talking like, drives by you, waves hello, but he passes by, his midas pass by a person like that, so the body can't help but be elevated. Can't help but be transformed. There's a beautiful medrash that says, when the Malach HaMavos came down to take Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama back to Shemayim, in preparation for the rest of history, the body and the neshama wouldn't let go of each other. Now, that the body wouldn't let go, we can understand, but why would the neshama not let go of the body? And the answer, the Medrash says, because the neshama says, this is the type of body that we're looking forward to Techis HaMeisim, but I have it already. Why should I surrender it? His body didn't get quite back to some orth and olive like Adam Marishon, but it came close enough that when he came down the mountain, he was giving off light. He was giving off light. So, Tazria, really, speech is the main chet, which affects everything else. In fact, everything, even adultery is referred to in terms of eating something, and everything comes down based into the mouth and how speech is used. So really, as much as loshon hara and derogatory speech and just misuse of speech seems to be just another avera, secondary, it really is the main one of all of them, and everything else branches out from it. Even though action seems much more serious and much more damaging, the bottom line is that the way a person speaks, if a person speaks in a very spiritually refined way, they're not going to do the other averas, because they're just not holding there. Speech is just indicating where they are. So that's why tzara specifically is associated, which is also interesting as well, because the only animal to shed its skin is a snake. It's a painful process that scientists to this very day have no idea why he actually has to do. It's a very painful thing. He goes in there, he grows older. So I actually looked it up. It's very cute because people on Yahoo that you can ask questions and people will answer it, right? So the whole list of people answer the question why snakes shed their skin. So one guy said, because look, if you run on your stomach like that for such a long time, you wear it out. It says like you're going to do a pair of shoes after a while, and you're going to do skin as well. Another person said that well, you start to grow, so what happens? The old skin gets too small. You got to change it, right? I didn't change mine. My cells just sort of die, and then new ones come back, and the body somehow adjusts itself. And it'd be terrible to stand there. Look at that guy. He must be changing skins. He's all bones right now. It doesn't. Kodesh Baruch Hu can do it all kinds of things. Why would Kodesh Baruch Hu make it dafka? The snake would have to go through this process of changing his skin, and there shouldn't be any scientific reason for it because of the fact that he was the instrument to bring out our transformation of the skin. He's there to remind us what once was as well. So we're all trying to get back to Kesunos Or with an Aleph. Now, the question is, why haven't I done it? Every time I do a mitzvah, I should glow. But it should be that I do a mitzvah. A person does a mitzvah, they glow automatically. They do an avera, they lose that glow. So the answer is again the same idea of why people who do averas don't get sick, and why people who do a mitzvahs can get sick in the end. Because for the sake of free will, it can't be so obvious. So what does the Kodesh Baruch Hu do? He takes all your Kesunos Or that you're building up on a daily basis through all your mitzvahs and your Mesiras Nefesh, and he puts it away in a trust account. And Yemot HaMashiach, Kodesh Baruch Hu opens it up. At that point in time, because now once Bechira is over, once there's no longer any need for free will, we no longer have to be fooled by the system to know what's absolute, what's not absolute. But once we can afford to actually open up and see things as a Kodesh Baruch Hu sees them, automatically everyone gets the Kesunos Or they earned until that point in time. And then you're really going to find out who's who. The same with the man, for example, if a person could, the Gemara says, a person could say, I'm a tzaddik, can walk on a tzaddik, but tomorrow his man falls right out of the field, right? You can't hide the facts anymore. People get into machlokas. Who owns this slave? Who bought the slave? So my slave, your slave. So the person responsible for the slave has to feed the slave. Yeah, right. So whoever's man, whoever's door the man fell, that was machriya the machlokas. We knew or a person was getting divorced, and the woman said, "You didn't pay my kesuva." And he said, "I did pay the kesuva." So where the man fell, that would indicate the situation. So likewise, in your Yemasa Mashiach, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool your Kesunos Or any of the time. Yemasa Mashiach, Kodesh Baruch Hu will give everybody what they're holding on to, whatever they developed, and they'll automatically become the level of Kesunos Or, and then onward. And the truth is, the main Kesunos Or doesn't even come even till Techis HaMesim. When Kodesh Baruch Hu recreates us anew without the Zuhama, without the spiritual impurities that Adam inherited from the snake back in the Garden of Eden. If that's the case, having said that, then basically all of the events of history, all through history, but certainly towards the end of history, are just about getting back to Kesunos Or as well. Going back from the Ayin to the Aleph, right? The Aleph, of course, as it says, Yad al Keska, right? The famous Aleph by Parshas Amalek, the Parsha and Beshalech, where Kodesh Baruch Hu removes the Aleph from the Kisei, because why? Because Amalek is in the world. As long as Amalek is in the world, Adam can't be a full Adam, which means the Aleph of Adam is also small. It's the same Aleph of Vayikra, right? The Aleph of Adam and the Kisei, because the Demus of Adam is on the Kisei. So if Adam can't be himself, the Kisei can't be Shalem. Right? So it's the same Aleph that turns Vayikra into Vayikra and gives you an ongoing relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. The Ayin, of course, is the Ayin of Amalek in the end. Right? So they say the Aleph of Adam or the Ayin of Amalek. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, where, Haman Minatar Minayin, it refers back to the Eitzadas Tova Ra, the actual Ched itself. And Adam Eitz, Hamina Eitz, and the word Hamin can be read Haman, right, in the end. So what's the connection? Because when Adam ate from the Eitzadas Tova Ra, that was the transformation from Or with an Aleph to Or with an Ayin in the end. And that's what made Amalek possible. Without that transformation, without that lack of clarity, the Gematria of Amalek is Safek. The Safek comes from going from total spirituality, from true and false, down to just good and bad, good and evil in the end, which is more subjective. Kodesh Baruch Hu, you just stand back and look at the events and see the impact it has on people. Right? The same way, for example, that, in a crisis, you can always see where people are holding. right? And I watch myself, and I get disappointed a lot of times by how I react in certain crises, And there's times you can hold back. There's times when people are delaying things. You want to get going. You want to start doing something else, or you're trying to accomplish something. People are blocking you, or they're acting annoying. They're being rude. There's not that you're doing anything wrong, right? And I remember being at the airport one time. I had to really hold myself back. Somebody was being so rude and they were from, unfortunately, we're in keeping, and other people were watching, standing around. It was such a phenomenal chillush, and the person had no consciousness of himself in this context. I was involved in an even worse situation once, Erev Shabbos, and you want to say something, and you don't know what to say, and it's like boiling and building up inside of you, and so hot, and when you let it out, you go, boy, I wish I kept my mouth shut. I wish I hadn't said that yet. Your whole perspective changes between before and after. But sometimes you can't control yourself, and after you do let it out, you do respond, and you complain, fetch what the case may be, immediately after you get perspective. And you say to yourself, you feel bad, I wish it wasn't on that level. I wish it was on a higher level where I could control myself and only say what has to be said. Right? Only do what has to be done. Only act in the way that it has to be acted. But not more than that. Right? There's times you want to beat the Chonamuna. And I'm not supposed to say things like, I shouldn't question things like that. A real firm Jew, in the back of your mind, there are people who don't hear things like that. They don't see things. They're not holding on that level. They have no problem saying those anti-bitachon things. Okay, that's their madrega. But other people know what's right. They can hear the voice inside saying, put it aside. Right? Trust in the Kodesh Baruch Hu. But the mouth just can't, it's got to get it out. The body's fighting. I just got to ask that question. I got to make that complaint in the end. And what you do is like you lost the battle. Kodesh Baruch Hu is doing all of these events of history. He's pushing us around. He's pushing, for a while, we were allowed to sit on the fence. We just sat on the fence. We did whatever we wanted to do, careful, Kodesh Baruch Hu. We were still being graded. Kodesh Baruch Hu was still taking notes on our behavior about how much Lamabah we're going to get and how much Gehenna we'll need in the end. But now that history is coming to a close, Kodesh Baruch Hu wants all the pieces to line up the way they're supposed to line up, where they belong. Are you a believer? Are you a Baal B'tachon? Are you a kofar, God forbid? Are you somebody who's for the Jewish people, against the Jewish people? Are you fulfilling the mandate of creation, or are you against it? Are you being a macher, a maker, or are you just a part of this whole thing? All the events are forcing people to have to be who they are. You can feel it. It's bringing out the situation, because you have to make a decision. Right? It's like, for example, someone comes over to you and says to you, what do you think about this tie I bought? Right? I don't want to get involved right now. Right? The person says, I don't know, I'm not really good at things like that. Right? You might think about it, but, you put it aside. The person says, no, I need to know. I need your opinion right now. I'm about to buy it. Right? I need to have an opinion. Right? And the person says, well, I don't know. Why is this important? Because it's your money. And there's no refunds. Right? And you get the credit. If I take it back later on. All of a sudden the person looks and says, I don't know. The blue is like, it's not exactly you. Let's take a look at some other ties instead. What happened? You just became a chacham all of a sudden. Right? Until now you're totally inept. Now the money came to the picture, became a baki and tie selections all of a sudden. I didn't care. I didn't want to care. I was too lazy. Whatever the case, I was distracted. I was too busy. I didn't care. Oh, it's my money all of a sudden? Money makes people do things. Money makes people decide who they are and where they are. So Kodesh Baruch Hu is the exact same thing. Kodesh Baruch Hu, the question that we asked 2 weeks ago was, are you prepared? The other half of the question is, are you who you're supposed to be? Right? Because Kodesh Baruch Hu is coming right now to find out, not that he doesn't know. Every Nesoyan is never for Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's for us. Avraham had to know he could shech Yitzchak if he had to. Yaakov had to know he could do what he had to do in the end. Right? Everybody else has been drifting. We've had it good. We're just minding our own business, living our own lives. Now Kodesh Baruch Hu wants to know who you are. He wants you to know who you are. So all the events, how you respond, what interest you take, how sensitive you are, or you're not, or you're too sensitive, whatever the case may be. But Kodesh Baruch Hu is mevar. All of this, all the events of history, is pushing you either to Kesanos or with an ayin, or Kesanos or with an aleph in the end. And there won't be second chances when it's all said and done. That's it?